Okay, guys, going to spend just very briefly just showing you what the pitches look like for the cover one cut. All right, that's the first coverage in the setup. Something that you're going to pretty much be running most of the time. So he has two different ways to call it. Cover one is, like I talked about before, base personnel. 51 is when the nickel comes on the field. The only difference is when the nickel's on the field, because the nickel's going to follow and take that third receiver. But the rules are the same. You're going to have a safety come down, cover either wherever the tight end is. We had a setup back then where the left safety would come down if the tight end was on the left, and the right safety would come down if the tight end was on the right. We just pretty much play right and left, or we can go strong safety, free safety. Didn't really matter. But the main thing that's mostly important with this whole defense is the idea that we're going to have one whole player, okay, and it's going to be out of these three. Most of the time, it's always going to be that middle linebacker, or it's going to be the will. All right. And it depends on the route distribution. So right now we have base personnel versus 21. We have two backs in the backfield, a tight end. And right now, based off of we all have man assignments, okay. But if anybody ever gets out leveraged and you have a man to man, the whole player will actually help out and take over one of these guys. So let's say we get what I call again four strong, okay, four guys going out to one side, including the Z. All right, everybody's basically going to work over, and then this Mike, who is the original hole player, is actually going to go and help out on one of the players going to the left, and our Will would now become the new hole player. So that is something that happens, but the key thing is this only happens in the game when you're not using one of those players. Okay, if you're actually using one of those four players down in the box, the game will not switch off like I just talked about. So I'll show you more about that later. It's important to know. Down here, let's go to 51 hole actually. So we have a lot of times we're going to be in a lot of cover, a lot of nickel packages, and we're going to play some nickel package like versus some 21 sets, 12 sets, doesn't matter. But let's just talk about the most common thing that we're going to see. These are all under center formations. This probably needs to be updated to more gun formations. But right now we have up here in this picture, we have two linebackers that are playing 21. Okay, basically banjo. That's what 21 equals. Banjo and banjo is what most people use. So if the back, even though when we start, one of these guys is a whole player, if the back flares out to the left, the player to the left, the Sam here would go get him, and then the Mike would become the hole. All right. Conversely, if the back was to flare out to the right, the Mike would go get him, and this player would become the hole. Again, if you were using though one of these players, they wouldn't do that. Okay, so the game is smart enough to know that if your user is on one of the players that's in the 21 or the banjo, that the banjo won't happen. The computer will actually just man up and just play the original rules. But if you're using somebody else like the safety, the nickel, all right. I even think if you in this case you're using the strong safety, you're fine. But this is something I wanted to show you because when you're playing a lot of cover one cut, you want to make sure that you are using the right guy. And if you're using the right guy, you have to understand what you're doing. But in general, guys, this is cover one. The way it's explained, the best way that I like to explain it is it's really good defense versus the middle of the field, right? Because you have a post safety player in the middle, you have another player sitting in the hole. So it's hard to throw digs, it's hard to throw post, right? From the outside working in. You can feel good about that. Those are pretty easy throws that most people love to throw, right? Shallows are going to be a troublesome play. You can't really get on the shallow like you want to unless you use it and you help out. So really the only open throws are going to be like throws, comebacks, outside lane throws, okay? People might try to throw outs, right? But those are harder throws in general to be consistent on. So that's pretty much the power of playing a lot of cover one. Plus, obviously, it's really good versus the run. We already talked about having that safety down the box and how the game counts him as a linebacker helps you be able to stop the run. So this is the reason why this is the core coverage that goes with our setup. So let's go into the Madden world and let's take a look at it. What's going on, guys? We have cover one cut here, or cover 51 cut. So we're going to start with 4-3 wide, cover one hole, which is the same idea as Jim Schwartz's cover one cut. I like to run this play in any situation, doesn't matter. But I primarily probably run it on first and second down, and then I run it in third and medium, third and short, and then definitely probably in the red zone. So I like to get that cut player, that hole player to be available to me to take away some of the easier throws. Okay, and that's that. But when you run this coverage, you need to just also understand who you're using is going to be a big factor on the play itself. So if I came out and just let's come out in this play right here, and we're in cover one cut, cover one hole. Okay, so right now we have a 43. We have these four players that are in the box. They are responsible for the three guys in the core, which is which is the halfback, the fullback, and the tight end. Okay, so these three are covered by these four, and the reason why I say it like that is because depending on the route distribution, they could switch assignments. So let's just go through a couple routes real quick. With the tight end, he's just gonna put him vertical down the field. We'll take the fullback and just flare him out to the right, and we'll take the halfback and flare him out to the left. So the assignments that you see here on this screen are going to play exactly as so. Now notice that I'm not using any of these players, okay? I'll talk more about that later. But this is just examples of not using any of these four players that are involved in this 43, all right? So you see how the safety takes the tight end, the Sam takes the fullback, and the Will took the halfback, okay? So that's pretty simple. Let's take a quick look replay at that. We understand that. That's just base football. All right. Now there are times that sometimes, and it depends, what team you're playing with, sometimes the tight end doesn't depends on the routes, but sometimes they don't switch, sometimes they do switch. Which when I say switch, I mean like a banjo. So if we ever do get like the tight end running a shallow route and the fullback flaring out to the right, okay, and let's just put this tailback to the left, sometimes the Sam and the strong safety will switch this, all right, which could lead to a guy being out of leverage right there, as you see, but you need to at least know that that could happen. So let's take a look at that replay. Again, in practice mode, the first time you do something, it's always a little bit funky. The second time is more true. But here, you see how the Sam has to take over the tight end because why? He's coming inside. And the key thing is, this is the thing you have to remember. This is from the backfield. So we're making this banjo because the player that's being involved, the fullback, is coming from the backfield. That's when the banjos activate. When players from the backfield cause some sort of potential switch. Okay. And you see the whole player though. You see how he kind of moves over for a couple steps. Look at Kurt Warner, 54. He kind of moves to the left a little bit, over, right, and then moves to get in the window. But he doesn't necessarily cover. But he does kind of take away a quick throw, so that's pretty good. All right, let's go with the corner route with the tight end. Let's go with a fullback flat route again, and let's go with the halfback going to the left. All right. So here we get a switch again, okay? So this is the other switch that could happen. This is not 100% of the time, guys, just so you know. Sometimes if you let the computer do this, they may not switch. But here, when you get corner routes, right? So we get a vertical stem release and we get this player working out to the flat. Instead of waiting to see what's going to happen, they just switch because who has more outside leverage? The strong safety has more outside leverage. He has better outside leverage, I should say, on the fullback. So here, take that. So this is an important thing to know because if you have a matchup and you say, "Hey, I want my strong safety to play on Kittle," well, there's times that this can happen. Okay. Now, the only thing that you can do to avoid that to happen is say, "Hey, I'm going to user the strong safety here." Okay. He has the fullback. I'm going to user him just by me being highlighted on him. I'm not even touching the remote control right now, but he can just basically just be highlighted. The computer is smart enough to say, okay, that means the user is covering him, is covering the fullback. We're not going to do a banjo. We're not going to switch those two. All right. So now it's going to be always covered by the strong safety. Okay. So that's something to remember. And that's something important to know when it comes to matchups down the line. Okay. Now let's get into a situation where our whole player here actually becomes a cover guy, and that can happen. Okay, and the adjacent whole player becomes the whole. In this formation, okay, it would be a situation where all four players go out to the right, okay, or they step to the right. It could be like a play action pass, just so you know. All right, but let's just do that. Let's go with a lot of times if you get players that are crossing to the right, you usually get somebody going back to the left, like a play action pass or something like that. All right. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to get off a green law. Oops. Let's put our running back in the backfield here. Um, what we're going to see here is we're going to see what we call a four-way. Okay, a four-way, four to a side, or push or flow pass. Okay, those are different words, but basically, when we watch this play, we're going to see how, again, first play is always a little funky. Let me do it again. But you can see how Kurt Warner became a cover guy. All right. I'm giving him a really tough route with that immediate under. Let's keep it on this crosser like this. Okay. All right, that one he went over and covered the running back, but you can just see how the backside linebacker becomes the hole player here, right? So because we have four to a side, what happens is Fred Warner, he basically helps out in this situation, and because he knows that the will can't get to his assignment, which was the halfback, so he goes and covers him, and the will now becomes your three receiver player right in the hole, okay, or cut player, okay. So that only happens again if I'm not using Warner or Greenlaw. Okay, so let's say I'm using Warner because I can see a lot of people potentially doing that, right? I'm using Warner, we're good. And again, the tight end ran a deep route, so the safety stayed on him. But if he runs the underneath route, it will be a switch. So those are the routes. Here are the assignments. In this case scenario, we're not going to get any type of banjo between Greenlaw and Warner. It's all going to be between the other guys. Okay, so Warner's going to stay that way because I'm using him. All right, and he's going to stay as the hook player. And now the banjo happened between the backside linebacker and the Sam. So take a look at this. And I know there's a lot of talk right here, guys. There's a lot of information I'm throwing at you, but we just want to make sure we understand why these banjos happen so that when we are in different situations, we're not confused by it or we're not surprised by it, and we can maybe even control it ourselves, okay? Let me just show you another example. Again, really the more common example you're probably going to see because so many people run what? Run a lot of gun formations, or just let me just do something simple here. Let's say we are in 51 hole, which is the other coverage. So we're going to go into nickel, wide, 51 hole, or 51 cut. All right. So this is what we see a lot. So right now, the situation is we have really a 21. We have a 21 between Greenlaw and Warner. All right. These two linebackers on the one halfback. And you can already see that my whole player right now is this player here. Okay. But if you're not controlling any of those two linebackers, what happens is as soon as the back goes out to the left, the whole player, the original whole player becomes the cover guy, and then the whole player becomes now Fred Warner. All right. So that is the beginning of it. So you know, if you're not using those two players, which again, this is your choice in your defense who to user. Sometimes I like to use it as safety myself when I know I'm getting certain routes and I need to protect somebody. But now you're in good shape. Now, if I was to take the defense and to flip it, right? And now I have this player is covering the halfback. And obviously, we're going to just get the normal setup, and Fred Warner is going to be the guy in the middle of the field. Okay, so just want to make sure you guys understand how that works. So if you are using one of the players, it's part of the reason why a lot of times if I can control it personally, I like to have it so that if I'm going to be using this backside backer, like I talked about in the run fit section, I want to be the man guy and I want to leave the whole player to be Warner. So your safeties have to be comfortable switching, you know, and that's why I said you want to have maybe some versatile safeties, but you know, these two guys might have to switch on a fly. And I know when I was with Jim, we didn't really play strong and free. We just played two safeties. Okay. We just play like right and left, and we had the flexibility to move guys around and do what we wanted. We didn't want to be beholden to always having a strong safety down. Okay. But that's that. So that's the way the whole works. Um, Also, let's take a look at as we go through it now. You may not always want to be in a cover one hole and be actually let me go back on this because we do have other cover ones that we want to play. So in order to get that type of coverage, a cover one hole, you're gonna have to just user it yourself. So if you want to call cover one spy because you want to just switch it up and you want to have a little bit of a different pass rush and a little bit different leverage, you know, you're going to have to now user definitely somebody in the middle, right? You can't just take Warner. He's in a spy right now. You can't just take him and put him into a hook curl. You can't put him in a middle read. All these things don't play the same. Okay, they don't play the same, and I wouldn't recommend doing it. So you either live with the spy that you have here and understand that you're not really playing cover one hole, or you just kind of do it yourself. Okay, you just put him in whatever assignment you want, and now you have to just kind of user him in this situation. All right. But I wanted to make sure you understand some of these other cover ones aren't cover one whole, but you can turn them into cover one whole. So speaking of that, there's going to be a lot of play calls, I think, if you know, when you run this defense of cover one robber. Okay. And I like cover one robber to give a little bit of disguise. Now, the golden rule that I learned over my years in the NFL is that if a team came out in a lot of these compression type formations, it's best to just line up and just play cover one hole and just get your safety down the box. Why? Because of run fits, right? So, if team comes out in close, I always thought, showing, disguising your coverage, it doesn't really matter. You need to make sure that this player who has potentially a C gap, right, or he could be an outside player playing off of the D end, he needs to be down there now. He can't really stop run plays from starting back here. Okay. You can get away with that a little bit more when you don't have compression sets. Why am I saying that? Because when you don't have compression sets, the chance of you getting cracked by a receiver are less. Okay. It's pretty much what you see is what you get, and that's going to be the situation. So, but if you are, in cover one a lot, you don't necessarily want to be showing it all the time. So, another way that I like to get into a kind of cover one hole, and I'm trying to find a formation on this 49ers playbook that's actually spread out a little bit. Everything's so close. So give me 1 second here. Uh, it's okay. Let's just do it versus. Let me see if we have a 2x2 formation. Okay, let's do this one. Let's go two tight ends, right? Now, when you call cover one robber, you guys know it comes out in this type of look. It comes out in a too high look, right? So interesting that the quarters are playing off. But anyway, so we have this too high look right now, and that's perfect. So if we want to now get into a cover one hole type of defense, depending on the matchup that you want, let's just say make it easy for now. Let's put the safety on the wing. Okay. We already have the assignment here of the Sam. He was on the wing. Actually, let's make it better, more realistic, right? Let's put the safety on Kittle. Okay. We'll keep the Sam on the wing. All right. And now we will user this player right here. Okay. If you don't want to user him, you're just going to have to put him in an assignment. You're not going to get the same type of presence in the middle, but you can just at least make sure that he's not covering somebody man to man. Right. So this would be your setup. So here we've talked about, against this style of formation, I usually like to be in the over front, not necessarily, or just the regular um, 4-3 over, just not the nickel over front. That's fine. But right now, I'm just gonna obviously make the adjustments we usually talk about of just spreading the linebackers. Okay, so at least now we have a look of like, okay, it's a too high shell. Safety now is going to have to obviously play the run from depth, but you can kind of hide it a little bit better. All right. So let's look at the other situations we can use cover one hole because there's going to be a lot of different ways I like to get into it, guys. Big Nickel has a nice walk down package, okay? But cover one hole is not one of the checks here that I usually have. But if you want to kind of mess around with your audibles here, you can check out one of your plays. Let's say to take out cover three seam, we put in cover one hole, okay? And I'll call, let's say, weak safety blitz. So let's say we're going against a team, we want to be in a big nickel package. Let's say we're going against a team that has like a running quarterback, right? And they're coming out all these funky formations like the Ravens. Let's go wide receiver in the backfield. This is today's football, guys, as you know. We'll go inside zone. I know this isn't a run stopping video, but we do want to talk about disguising a little bit. So weak safety blitz one. So this is a nice play that shows that pressure to start, right? Now, technically, you can run this, but this is an actual pressure. But we're going to check now into cover one hole. And what happens? What? The safety stays down there. He gets into his position, and we're playing cover one hole right here. Makes sense? So we have feel good about now. We still kind of have a different run front right now. This is an under run front right now because, again, you have a shade to the side of the tight end, which is now 44, and you have a three technique over here. If you wanted to make it into an over front, that's fine. You can do that. But honestly, this is one of my big secrets, and we'll talk about it some more later. That under front is really good versus these type of formations where the gun, where you get that automatic what rule that I talk about. The three is away from the running back. So that's why I like Big Nickel because you can get into this underfront simply by calling a couple of the rare defenses in the game. The rare defenses in the game would be weak safety blitz one, and I think I added these plays in there. Weak safety blitz three, I don't have cover 6 invert. Jim Schwartz doesn't run that, but that would be another one where they get lined up in under front. So I've made this video plenty of times, guys, but just from a disguise point, when you walk the safety down and you call cover 3 weak safety blitz or cover 1 weak safety blitz, okay? The front, because it's a blitz, lines up in an under front, which is a big thing in the NFL or in the college game. Anytime you get an under front, usually that's when there's some sort of blitzer coming off the edge. So if you're looking at this from an offensive point of view, you can kind of get an idea. You're playing an over team, and all of a sudden they're in the under front. Whoa, what's going on? Okay. But the cool thing about Madden is that if you now check your coverage to anything on here, I can go to cover 4, I can go to cover 3 seam, the front doesn't change. So now you stay in the underfront, but the coverage changes to what you want. Okay. So this is another way I like to get into cover 1 hole. It kind of makes also people like wonder what's going on. You know, is this a blitz or is it not a blitz? All right. So that's my other way to get into cover 1 hole. I don't have it here, just fine. I might want to go back and update that you guys to the Patreon about adding in a cover 1 hole out of dime as well, in case you get a spread out set. But most of the time we're in dime personnel on third down and long, so that's probably why it's not in there. And let me just check one more thing. We are going to get some cover 1 pressures later on in the third part of this video. But if you ever have a play and you want to run cover 1 hole, you want to do it from, let's say we are in the odd package, okay? You can just call, obviously, the odd package, guys. I don't think I'm telling you guys anything new, right? And just take the blitzer and just, user him and just put him in a zone, whatever it is, and just play ball. Right? Or you could just say, hey, I want to man them up here because I want better leverage over here. And now you're basically playing a version of cover 1 hole with you being the hole player having to do the responsibilities. So it's a very, very flexible coverage. Okay. And that's that. Now let's also talk about a little bit about the pass coverage, the actual defenders playing pass. I've always felt like my corners are going to be basically by themselves. I'm not going to do any type of adjustments at all. The only thing, if I'm in a bind and I'm just feeling like, hey, I need to get into something, I'm going to put everybody in outside leverage. So I'm going to use triangle and I'm going to go basically, coverage adjustments, and I'm going to go outside shade. Okay. I'm going to use that a good amount of the time. If I feel like my corners and my nickels and everybody is just way better than, everybody, I won't make any adjustments whatsoever. Okay. But I will do that somewhat. I will put outside leverage because I really want to make sure that this nickel stays outside. But in general, just so you know, I feel like the players play pretty well in base, their base alignment. You don't have to make that many adjustments. I'm going to come back later on in the next couple weeks and make another man video to update some of the leverage situations and what you can do. But if you have time and you feel like you're playing cover 1 hole a lot and you want to maybe take away some of those, the route that I feel like really does a good job against cover 1 or beats cover 1 is if you ever see a route where it's a deep dig, like on the left-hand side, Samuel's running like a 12-yard dig. That's not necessarily a deep dig. There's ones that go 18, 20 yards down the field. They get open pretty well because the corner ends up turning and running. Okay, so if you have time and you feel good with your stick control, you can individually assign each guy to play inside or outside. And if you can get your outside guys right here, all right, so it comes back to triangle coverage adjustments. And then here you're going to have to select the receiver, okay? And then from there, oops, I'm on offense. So here we go, coverage adjustments, individual, right? Select the receiver that's covering him, and you can shade right. So I can shade my outside corners, right? Let's do the one on the right to inside leverage. And the basic rule that I used in the NFL was, you want to play, a lot of times we played outside leverage in general because everybody wants to run go routes and you want to make sure you take that away. Okay. We want to funnel everything inside. But if you are worried about leverage and you want to play inside or outside, if the receivers outside the numbers in the NFL, because the numbers are so wide, are actually pretty even. I won't say so wide, they're actually perfect for what you need. Basically, play inside leverage with your corners. If the receivers are outside the numbers, if they're inside the numbers like these, you want to play outside, okay? Because you have help, direct help in the middle with your whole player, okay, and your post player. All right, but these guys are kind of on an island out here. The only thing that your outside, your free safety can do is kind of overlap and try to run over and make a play like this. which is the next part of what we talk about. But I will say, if you know somebody wants to get the ball to somebody, right? Like you know the ball is going to go to an outside receiver, okay, and you just leave them at base. Sometimes I will sit back here, and I've talked about this in my videos to my coordinator members. I would play with the safety. And what I would do is his original spot is about 12 yards. I would back up about 5 yards, okay? And what that does is when the ball is snapped, it allows me to kind of not have to backpedal. I can just kind of sit there for a second and you get a feel for where you have to go. And a lot of times I will play and cheat my safety over to where the ball might go. Now, it's very dangerous to do this, obviously, if somebody's running a post or anything like that. But if you know you get like Metcalf on the outside, you're going up against a guy that just likes to throw bombs, sometimes you can kind of bait him into that throw, right? And we can talk about matchups. There's a lot of little things that we need to talk about more when it comes to man coverage to enhance your man coverage. And that's being part of the Patreon. I'm going to update you on that stuff, especially as I do it in games. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. But what I would say is this: one thing I used to do, and I've always loved doing this, is actually pressing one of my corners, right? Knowing that as soon as that happens, that the offensive guy, my opponent, is going to say, "Oh, cool, I got to press. I'm going to try to throw a bomb." You can actually see them audibling and all that stuff like that, right? And that's a great thing, and you can let that rock. If you want to sit back here, right? And then now you can just sit there and be your Ed Reed self and go over and basically make yourself a pick, all right? Or you can also press your corner and then now also play over the top coverage, right? So if you play over the top coverage, all of your corners will now do what? So you press with the press triangle on PlayStation coverage adjustments over the top, they won't press. And obviously the guys that are playing off will play over the top because they're already off, but the one guy on the outside is not going to press Debo, and now we're going to get that type of matchup. So the timing is going to be off. They're going to be expecting to see a press animation, and they're not going to get it. So I'll spend some more time with some more safety techniques. We have something called doing a quarters track. We can also sit here and base align, which I don't use in my league, but versus a 2x2 spread set, it actually to me makes a lot of sense because you can't see anybody move. It looks like they're playing in the same position. And then now we can play quarters. We can play man to man from here. All right. And when the ball is snapped, I can just sit back in this, what I call a quarters track, and play from that position instead of playing from the middle of the field. So it's one of those things where, look, cover one is a big part of my life growing up and playing in the NFL and coaching in the NFL, that stuff. So it's one of those things where I'm going to teach you a lot of the techniques that I think can enhance the coverage and make it more, more friendly for us, okay, and not be so predictable. So overall, guys, I love the coverage. Like I said, use this coverage as your base coverage. When you have a play situation where you're not sure what to call, and it's a gotta have it situation, just be comfortable to call this coverage, man, and ride and die on it. Know that your team is built for it. Know that you have help. Okay, and if somebody ever beats you against your leverage or wins, just tip the cap and keep it moving and go to the next one. All right. All right. I'll see you at the next coverage, guys. Okay. So we're going to quickly talk about how Jim Schwartz runs his cover three scheme and then how it relates to Madden. In base coverage, he runs match style cover three, which gives you good outside presence, just like in cover one, where you're pretty much megging your corners for the most part. Those guys are going to take care of the number ones. And then we have our safety. He's going to rotate to whatever side you tell him. So the ways that he had it set up was he had two different setups. First one was something called three strafe, which is just really three strong, which meant safety rotate to the passing strength. We don't have that right now in Madden, especially out of base personnel. We can't do that. So we're not going to worry about that. 3X was the other call that he called, where the safety was to always rotate to the open side. So, we've talked about this before, the open side. Usually in every formation, there's a tight end on the line of scrimmage to that side, okay? Doesn't have to be on the line of scrimmage, but usually that's the way it is. And then opposite to the tight end, there's always a receiver that's on the line of scrimmage, okay? So we call that the X receiver. So every time you see a formation, there's always one wide receiver that's on the line of scrimmage. So basically, we would rotate to that side. And when that happens, when you see a formation, for the most part, this isn't all formations, guys, but when you see the majority of formations, tight ends over here, okay? And then usually you have an X receiver on the opposite side, and then you have your other players that can work around if we're playing I formation football, right? And we're just working I formation. So that's pretty simple. You guys understand that. So what we would do is we would have our safeties and we would rotate the safety always down to where the X was, or what we call the open side. When we talk about the run fits, I was talking about the side where there's no tight end. Now, there's some other examples where it's not always 100%. You can have a Z and an X on the line of scrimmage if the Y is off. But again, what we usually talk about is like that two surface side of an offense. Okay. If for some reason they had another tight end that was standing over here, all right. So let me just delete this. If it was a formation where it was two tight ends on the line of scrimmage, okay. What do we call it? A U. All right. And then we can just go from a Z and an X. Then now when you have a balanced set like this, you're going to have to denote which one is the open side and which one isn't. And usually the way the linebackers talk is that they always declare one tight end the strength, the run strength. Okay. So that would now be the closed side, and this side would be the open side. So our safety will rotate down here. Okay. But it's really simple when, like, if you get a slot formation, let's say we're getting any type of two-back slot formation, right? And we just get an X receiver, a Z, and a tight end, right? And if we work this out to being a one-back formation, it would still be this side over here. So the X doesn't necessarily mean passing strength, or it doesn't have anything to do with, away from passing strength. It's more really about run strength. Okay. So you're going to get this guy rotating down really away from the run strength, which allows your Sam linebacker to stay pretty much wherever the run strength is. Okay. So you'll be strong against the run that way. And then coverage wise, we have to go from there. So I just wanted to kind of explain that to you. So in Madden world, unfortunately, they don't have the ability to run the wide defense and run cover three match from 4-3 wide, or cover three match, or seam as they call it in the game, from 4-3 over. Okay, we can't do it from base personnel. We can do it from the underfront. The underfront does give us cover three seam, as what we call in the game. So that's what we're going to talk about first, is calling some underfront defense. Okay, so the frontage is a little bit different, but from the coverage standpoint, we can talk about that. All right, and then we're going to spend most of our time really talking about the nickel front, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But let me just show you a couple pictures just to bring some life to it. So here we have right now I formation, and we're just going to have the safety rotate down away from to the X, if you want to call it that way, or in this case, to the open side. All right. So that's how we would call it. So this is the one thing that's unique about his defense. We're running a 4-3 wide here in this picture, and you have four, DBs, or one DB and three linebackers, all inside the box. Like, they're inside of it, because what's happening here with these edges, you got your wide 5, you got your wide 9, right? These guys are pretty much like your force defenders. They're the edge of the defense. Remember in the video that, well, if you guys saw on YouTube, I just put up a quick video of him talking about the inspiration of the defense. Inspiration is all about playing like almost a 3-4 style defense, where your edges are on the line of scrimmage and can kind of knock everything back to what's in the middle. All we did was change the math and just put different bodies in different spots, but we have all these guys interiorly aligned. We're not going to get that right now. Unfortunately, it's going to be more of an under-style defense, more of a 3-4 mentality when we run this front. But from a coverage standpoint, we're going to be really good against outside breaking routes. We're going to be really good against corner routes. And then we potentially can have two linebackers in the middle with eyes now on the quarterback that can kind of have a little bit more vision. One could get sucked up in his pass responsibility of having to match 3 to the flat, but we kind of get back to that whole principle, right? So it's a really kind of neat way to play, almost a hybrid version of cover one, okay, with a little bit more flexibility. Now, there's a lot of different little techniques that Madden won't allow us to do, but there's examples here of like how we can play 3-over-2 out of cover one sets. pretty much we can play in and out, work it out, but we can't do that in Madden because that's not part of the game. So I won't spend a lot of time on it. I'll probably make some videos on that stuff, guys, later, just so you can see how. Actually, I did make a video. I apologize. I think one of my most popular videos I made this year was talking about how Jim Schwartz played triangle with his 3 match against, I forgot what team it was. I think it was the 49ers. So he did a really good job versus that. And yeah, I have an example of really what you kind of see here in this picture of a triangle being run. Okay. Oops. Went back too far. But anyway, you get the point. So let's go to the other coverage that is part of this setup and what we're going to be doing more often because we actually are going to be in nickel coverage a whole lot. So we're going to play 53. And again, it says 53Y. Okay. But we're going to end up probably having to just break it down to what it means. And it's going to be a version of almost like 53X in a sense. Okay. And I'll explain that. So what 53Y is, simply put, the safeties are going to rotate. Their rotation is going to be based off the tight end. Okay, so wherever the tight end is on the field, all right, we're going to basically bring a safety down. So if we're looking at it from this standpoint, all right, and I'm kind of doing it from an offensive standpoint, guys, because I know that's how most people look at stuff. All right, so we just have a good old one back formation gun. Okay, wherever the tight end is, our safeties will rotate to that side. So versus a 2x2 set like this, our safety will rotate down here, and he would be a seam flat player. This one will go back to the middle of the field. Now the nickel has an easy job. He's always going to go over to wherever there's more wide receivers, all right, or as we call it, the third receiver. All right, and we have our 2 backers in the box. So this in Madden world, okay, 2x2 formation, it would be actually calling 3 seam, and we call nickel or nickel wide 3 seam. Okay. So in the Madden world, we know the formation, so we can just call the play. And that's what we're going to call a lot of this play. Okay. For some reason, let me see if the eraser works here, guys. For some reason, we had let me get this widened out here. Give me 1 second. If we had a slot receiver on this side, or job there, slot receiver out here and another one out, and then our flanker out there. Now this would be a different rotation, right? So our nickel would be all the way. Now he would travel over here to this side of the field. So our nickel would be outside. He would be a seam flat player here on the right hand side. And then our safety would rotate down to the tight end still, but now he would be a buzz player. Okay. He would be a hook call player. Okay. So that would be in the game that we have right now, that would be 53 buzz. However, 53 buzz doesn't rotate in this way versus 3x1. It actually gives us a weak rotation with the safety working down to the weak side and this one going back. They used to have it where they had both. Now they don't. But the only way I can find a workaround was to be able to go, and I'll show you on the Madden game, is to be able to call dime, because dime allows you to play and switch the defense without the DBs underneath changing. You can actually play rotation to the tight end. Okay, so basically in our world, okay, we're gonna play 53, pretty much a lot of the 2x2 version. Okay, so we call 53Y. We're really just playing 53X. Really, let's just be honest. That's what's gonna happen. Um, I won't actually. Let me not call it X. It's a little bit different personnel grouping. Okay, we are in the nickel world, so we're gonna get that rotation. That's pretty much gonna work away from the nickel when we call 53. Our cover 3 seam. Okay, the nickel is always gonna go strong, and we're always gonna go weak. But really, the game plan for you guys is that anytime we get a 2x2 formation, we're going to call 53 seam. And if we get a 3x1 formation, then we're going to have to either call dime 53 buzz, which I'll show you on Madden, or we're going to have to just call a different defense. We're just going to go call cover 1, right? Because the one thing that I really like about, obviously, in real life and what we can't get in Madden, most guys understand this who have been studying this stuff, is that when you get versus a 3x1 formation, I'm trying to find a good one here. I guess this is fine. You get a 3x1 formation, right? And you want to play cover 3 match, you really don't get the match setup that you really want. And even the way we played it here, we were very simple with it. I think we kind of updated it a little bit later on. But we would actually just almost just turn this into man-to-man coverage. We had a call that we just called and just basically said, hey, It's 53 wide, safety's down. We're just going to man up 1, 2, and 3, play cover 1 on this side, and we're still going to play our 3 match to the left and go from there. So in the Madden world, we're just going to make that easy on you and just call cover 1. I mean, we're not going to sit here and try to call cover 3 and try to, man guys up, which you can. I've done it. I've called cover 3 seam, and we can talk about that later, and just man up the nickel, just played ball. But that's a different story for right now. We're actually going to be in cover 3 nickel a lot because I do anticipate that being probably one of the better ways to run the defense is to come out in nickel, even versus 21. So we're going to have the same rules where your nickel plays the role of a Sam linebacker, as you would in base coverage, and then your safety is going to come down opposite the nickel. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it. I can't really show you anything else here on the paper that's going to make more sense. I just like giving this overview for each coverage, and then we'll move along. So I'll check you out on the Madden on the flip side. All right, guys, let's talk about cover 3 and how we're going to use cover 3 seam this year. I will start off by saying that in the over front, in the over wide front, always, by the way, make sure match is on. Okay, just don't forget that. Always, we don't have cover 3 seam set up here. I could potentially call cover 3 sky and try to rework a whole little deal for you guys, but I don't want to spend 20 minutes on something that you may not even really use too often. And it also, unfortunately, calling cover 3 seam out of base, you can do it out of under, okay? But the bad thing is that I would only use this formation versus like, spread sets, all right? Even spread sets that are not slot formations, okay? There's a little bit of a problem in the game. You guys understand this, that if you came out versus, let's say, I formation slot, I don't have actually, let me see if I can just motion to it here. All right, so let's just say we got a play where team came out in I formation slot. We call cover 3 seam. So they came out and it looked like this to start. Okay, and this is how it would look if you call cover 3 seam to start. All right. On the left-hand side, I'm perfectly fine with our match principles on that side. However, on the right-hand side, anytime we get a nub tight end and we get a fullback going to the flat or any type of running back going to the flat, there's a possibility that the corner is going to come down and play the flat and leave the corner wide open. Okay. So I don't want to get you guys in that world right now. And a lot of formations are kind of naturally either going to be slot formations, and the same thing can happen out of a tight formation. So let me just show you that too. We came out in PA Sale versus cover 3 seam, and it was like this. Even though this is not a nub formation, it's still to the corner some sort of tight formation, and there's a chance that he can potentially do the same thing and let go of any type of exterior route on the outside. So just want to make sure you guys understand that. So don't run this defense really versus any type of tight formations, which is hard. It's hard to ask this because a lot of people and a lot of playbooks have these tight formations, and a lot of people like to line up in slot formations. Okay, so if you have a nub tight end, don't run the cover 3 to that side. Okay, so we can kind of live in this world. We come out in slot, right? And somebody came out in slot in the I slot. Over here, we don't have any type of compression. Again, it's only compression from what I understand that's involving the tight end and the running backs in the backfield. If it was 2 wide receivers compressed, not so much of an issue. I'm going to let it rock right now until I see any real big problems. But we'll talk about that next, and maybe later on we get some new formations. But let's focus on this. Right now, the strength of this defense again is not necessarily the run front. Under's a good run front, so that's not what we're talking about. But from the passing game, I like to use this on third down with people who might want to take a shot and run corner routes, or if people on first down really love to run outside breaking routes, especially from slot receivers, inside guys, okay, tight ends. So if it's a pro set tight end, so Whitehead's going to play vertical and outside on any type of route. So he's going to take care of a corner route and all that good stuff. Okay. Over here on this side, like I had said, because of the formation, we're going to have to remember to use our curl flat adjustment. Put him in a curl flat. I think you can actually go hard flat too if you wanted to, and that's going to let the corner play his true outside, just spot drop quarters. Okay, I mean 1/3. Everybody else here, we've talked about this in the 3 match rules, guys. We understand the rules. This video is more just about scheming and understanding what we're trying to get done. Again, we should have decent coverage on corner routes, and then we also have underneath coverage that we like from our linebackers that are sitting in the middle of the field. They are kind of in there, and they're basically taking care of a lot of these check down routes, and they also give body presence to digs. So you kind of have a little bit of a bonus there. And I'm using this guy right now, but yeah, so that's good. Now, again, that's how I would use it on third down, maybe like third and short versus a normal formation. Just make sure that the actual seam parts are relevant. So if we got a pro set, let's just go like this, right? We get a pro set formation and we call cover three seam. This is a good time to just run it. Right now, everything is good. Everything is worked out. Do I love this alignment of this player? Not so much. You know what I mean? And this is where, from a front standpoint, I kind of wish we were like in an over front. So if you really wanted to like shift the line to the right, you could potentially do that. Just there were so many bodies originally. You're already in an under front, and you have two guys that are protected to this side. I guess if somebody wants to run weak side zone, you feel pretty good about that. But in the passing game, it's kind of like too much. It's like overkill. Okay, so that's where we are. If we were in the over front, it would be a lot better. But right now we're in the under front, so it's a little bit too much over to the underside. All right, but really let's focus on when we're going to call this probably more often. We're going to call this versus, let's say we do get a team that wants to come out in 12 personnel because we got to live in this world too. All right, and we want to come out, we can come out in three seam, that's perfectly fine. But we want to come out in nickel. We want to put a safety down. Let's just go like take one of the safeties, put them down, and then let's play cover three seam. Okay. So we're playing cover three seam, which is 3X, okay, in this world. And we're right now, am I in the wide? I'm in nickel over, right? I'm in nickel wide. Okay, like I had talked about before, just make sure you get yourself maybe into nickel over, nickel wide. I don't like the double threes there. We already talked about the run frontage. You can just play it out if you want, or you can squeeze the line if you feel like you need to. Okay, in this world, I would just play it out. Let me go back to the right here, three seam. These guys get funky if I start shifting guys around here. Okay. Anyway, so our big safety nickel, right? It's totally screwed up. Let's do this over again. Our big safety nickel would be down in the as the outside seam flat player, and our safety that's walked down would be also a seam flat player. Okay. The great thing, you can also check into this too when you are in cover one hole. I think this is one of the checks I have already set up for you guys. Yep. So cover three seam. So this is really good again versus outside breaking routes. There's really not much to talk about, but this is just pretty much how I would get into it. All right, so that's there. Um, Now you do lose a little bit of, let's say a team, let's say you wanted to like come out and play nickel versus what I had talked about before in the original video. I know we're talking a little bit of run game here, but it does combine with when it comes to strategy. Let's say you wanted to play nickel over, big nickel over, right? You want to, not big nickel over G, so let me not say it that way. Let's just say over with the nickel playing with the safety playing the nickel, right? And you wanted to come out in three seam versus this look right here. So the first thing, like we talked about, to be safe, you're going to have to take this side and put them in a curl flat, okay, just so you're safe. But the good thing is that, okay, from a run standpoint, this is a wide open gap on the backside. That's the reason why we usually do squeezes down, right? This is a little bit of a soft edge right here against the run. But in the passing game, you should feel good that you have good coverage on the right hand side. It's just going to be solid. Really not going to be many routes. It's going to be open. And the left hand side, this is why we're still in this. We have a safety out here on a wide receiver, which could be a matchup problem. But with the seam flat technique, he's really just playing outside routes. He doesn't have to worry about the inside routes. You can give body presence here with him or the safety, but he doesn't have to necessarily cover him in every single route combination. So obviously, if he runs across the field, I have a route right now set up. Hold up. If he runs, a drag route across the field, then now we're in better shape. We feel like, okay, he's going to let it go and give it to his other players on the other side. So that's the advantage of playing maybe, obviously just jumping in the nickel. You're not going to be great against the run, but you're going to be solid enough that you can potentially get through it down, but you're going to be good versus the pass. That's against a pro set. But if you do get it versus just traditional one back offense where you're probably going to get your inside runs. We already have the plan set up with the run game. That's why I spent so much time on it. But again, the pass game, 2x2 formation, you should feel pretty good about this. Okay. We know how to play three seam. This is the best way to play three seam, in my opinion, against 2x2. If you get 3x1, I suggest that you guys just play cover one for now. Okay. Let me just kind of get into it real quick though. If you do want to play three seam, versus this. Let's say you're in a league where you can only run, the play so many times. You can't call the same coverage over and over, and you want to just call some three seam. I have done this before and it's worked out okay. I would just take this guy and take the nickel and just man him up, right? And just go from there. And that would usually kind of help you out with a lot of routes that people are going to throw. Just being 100% honest. But if you really want to do it how we did, kind of in Buffalo and how he does it now, you just man up all three of these guys out here. Okay, just man them up so you now know all three of these guys are taken care of. I would user potentially this guy right here so that if the running back does check through the line of scrimmage and run like a route to the right hand side, I could take care of it. Let me see what this route is right here. This is actually a good example. So if the running back was to come through and check through, I would have to now know that I'm basically taking him. I have to match him and everybody else is good. Now, the weak side of this defense does play um, Meg, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Sometimes these things change, man. You sit here for a whole year and think all of a sudden they make changes they don't tell you. But on the backside of this, I'm going to take this guy. Let me just play with the offense, right? And he should match. The corner should take that slant route. Yep. So we're still playing Meg, and the seam flat player is still going to take anything over here on the weak side. Okay. Hey, what's going on, fellas? We're going to talk about cover three and the Jim Schwartz system and how it works. Just to give you a heads up, you could potentially, if you want to play base coverage and you want to base fronts and you want to use the over wide, you can add in cover three sky and just make some modifications to the coverage to give you what you want. Same thing with the over package. We don't have that in this playbook right now, just because it's a little bit too much to have to like go over because we're primarily going to be in the nickel front. All right. But I will start with the 43 under front. Just realize this front right here is what I usually use on short yardage, red zone, things of that nature. And cover three seam is a real nice way to play it. But you can use it against base personnel. If you go against 21 personnel, just be aware of some of the issues that you can have from a coverage standpoint. Guys in the Patreon know we've talked about this, but this is just a normal formation right now, so we're pretty good against all passing routes that we can get. Um, we're going to get our guys, our seam players, we're going to play match on vertical and outside routes. All right. And then everybody else is going to play like we normally do. So this is a good time to use it versus a team that might want to come out on 3rd and 2, then they want to run a play action pass. Okay. Or even on 1st and 10, team that likes to run the ball, but then they also like to throw play action off of those runs. And I'm talking about traditional play action plays. That would be more like let me try to give you a couple examples here. That would probably be something that you would see. Let's just jump into this formation right here. Okay, so if you're going against a team that wants to run a lot of corner routes, you'll probably know that before the game, and you have an idea, you want to protect against corner routes and things of that nature. All right, so this is a route that three seam plays pretty well against if it's a widespread formation. Okay, widespread formation, you got to like that if your Sam linebacker is your athlete, that he's going to be able to run and pretty much match this corner out. That's a good thing. He's going to stay outside leverage of it for the most part, and he should be a good player that, hopefully that's one of your better players. Because the way we're playing this coverage is really 3X, okay? As you see, the safeties walk down weak, all right? But let me just warn you guys quickly, and that's what this video is really about, is to give you guys just a heads up on all the little nitty gritty stuff. All these tight formations that you can get can potentially cause problems in cover three match or seam, and also nub formations can present problems. So let's take the same corner out, right, and let's run this from both examples of running it against three seam, and you get the corner out combination really. But really what happens here is this um, flat route really kind of gets into that area that we talked about in cover three seam where the corner can potentially come off of his assignment and go and match the flat route. So that happens versus a lot of compressed type formations. It also happens versus nub formations. So if the offense came out like this and they were in 21 personnel and they came out in high formation slot and they ran any type of flat seven, flat corner combination, you're playing regular three seam, you're going to give up a touchdown to the corner route. All right. So that's something just to know and to understand that you don't want to get caught in that situation. We talked about the different things that you can do, but the main thing you have to do here is to get yourself out of seam coverage to this side. So with that being the case, you may not even really want to call three seam. Okay. It's just something that it's a good defense if you feel like you're going to get a lot of split tight end formations. Okay. So I would use it versus stuff like team that wants to come out an ace, right? 2x2 ace. They want to come out like that. Now we also want to be in a 5-man front as a nice little change up, and we want to be in this coverage. Okay. And now we are good against corner routes. We may not be great against over routes and boot plays and things like that, but at least we have some nice body presence in the middle of the field. And that's really one of the strengths too. You get those two inside linebackers that are those hook curl players. Most likely they're going to be staying in their position unless three takes them to the flat, and you're going to get good presence underneath. All right. So that's why I like that, especially on like red zone goal line. I like having those two linebackers that are kind of sitting in there, hopefully getting in the windows for slants and stuff. All right. But where we're going to probably live the most is going to be working this coverage. Okay. Working the 53Y part of the coverage. Really, again, we're kind of splitting it up. We're not doing a double call coverage here. We're just going to call a cover three seam because we know the offense comes out in what? 2x2. So anytime an offense, we see the formation, not a big deal. Now, if a team wants to motion, we could talk about that later. Okay. But right now, we're just playing 2x2. We're using our seam rules. Again, this is a nice little change up towards what? You still get good outside presence with your seam flat defenders taking away outside breaking routes. So it looks like man to man on the outside. And then on the inside, we have two guys that are working off of their route combinations, like we talked about. I'm not going to sit here and teach three seam again, but really, there's nothing here that um, can really beat you that much, except maybe some shallow routes, which is the same thing that, once you get shallow routes crossing across the field, that could be a problem versus any type of cover three defense. The one thing that I've seen people do too is just try to throw it to the slot receiver very quickly because the three seam player kind of stays outside leverage, hard outside leverage. So they just throw a little seam route. So you might have to give a little body presence if you're using a linebacker in this area. Okay. You can also use it as safety and help out. This is one example where I would not back up the safety deep. I wouldn't play him back here. Okay. And do what I told you guys of sit and wait. I would actually sit in my normal home spot because the throws are going to come out. They're going to come out pretty quick and they're going to be caught around 15 yards down the field, about right here. Okay. So you need to be in position to cover that. Um, what else is there? So that's that. Now, just do remember the same thing. If you get 2x2 compression sets, which are probably pretty popular this year, you have to consider getting out of playing. I don't have an actual route that I can really show you, but playing three seam versus 2x2, our first checks that we always had, we had different things to do. But versus stacks, we would just play what we call white. And white was just a check that we did where we just manned up our guys over here. It played man to man versus stacks. Okay. If you're worried about over here, this looks like a kind of a semi compression set. I would just go put this guy into this right now is, I guess I'm in big nickel. I'm not sure what's going on here. Anyway, you could normally just put this guy into a short zone. I'm not sure what happened on this play. Hold on. I thought I picked regular nickel here. Nickel wide. Go nickel over just real quick. Sometimes these things are funky. I should be able to put this curl flat defender into, yeah, just a curl flat. All right. If you ever call a big nickel, just realize you have to have a nickel on the field to get some of those nickel adjustments for your low players. But you can also sit over here and you could just play curl flat as well. Okay. It's just that versus these compression sets, there's a chance that the corner would take an out route from somebody coming from off the ball. Okay. So that can happen. So if you see this type of formation, you may just not want to call it or just be prepared to play, hard under or trying to get your guys in the curl flats. Okay. But that's where we are there versus empty formations. That's more of really of a 3x1 check. But You know what? Let's do that right now because we're saved 3 by 1 coming up here. But if we do get empty, let me just kind of show you how it's actually worth running a little bit of three, um, what we're going to call here 53x, okay, versus empty, because of the fact that you're going to get still match to the two receiver side, okay. As long as these guys are normal spacing over here on the left side of the screen, you're going to get match over here, okay. So those guys will play match of 1 and 2. And on the right hand side, we're going to make our adjustment once we get to 3 by 1. So 3 by 1 in the Jim Schwartz world, his answer is to play a Buzz defense. Okay, I can't put Buzz into the game this year, or into this plan, even though Buzz is an option in wide and over. But if you've ever noticed, the Buzz safety comes from away from the passing strength, which is, in most defenses, you can kind of control it and you can go Buzz weak and Buzz strong. But in Madden, they don't let you do that. So unfortunately, we have to play 3 by 1 formations with two different fronts that aren't that great when it comes to how they look to stop the run. But in a passing situation, it may not matter. So we have dime rush, cover 3 buzz seam. All right. So dime rush is a front that I have that it's basically a double three technique for a little bit. This player over here is kind of head up, but it's a wider version of dime normal. Okay. Now we have obviously an extra DB that's playing like that linebacker role, right? But he's really just a dime. And as you see here, though, this is what you want. You want the safety to rotation to come down to the three receiver side. All right. So that's a nice little disguise. However, you guys understand that in the Madden world, this defense plays zone drop defense over here to the right and over here to the left. We're going to get our seam rules with the solo corner and with the seam flat, okay, and sometimes with the hook curl. So, in order to change this up and actually make it more like Jim Schwartz's defense, in his scheme, he did have back in 2014 a way for us to play 3 by 1 match principles. And we kind of, it was one of those things where a lot of different people have different names for it. But we actually just really got real simple and just said, you know what, we have some really good personnel. We're not going to over confuse our guys. We have enough defense to worry about. We still have quarters that we haven't even started yet. So we have enough things that we can do versus a spread set like this where they're going to potentially throw vertical routes. We need to just play man to man over here on the right hand side. Okay. So versus 3 by 1, okay, you could just play man to man. So you could take the safety, man him up there. You could take this um, nickel, man him up there. That's the primary way to play man to man. The outside corner, you can choose to play man to man as well. That's up to you. I do know sometimes this guy does play mod or plays Meg. Let's just take a quick test right here because it's actually perfect. This is a perfect route. He's in a press position right now, which is something I wouldn't necessarily recommend. So I'm just actually going to back him off. I'm going to back off both corners. I know the corner on the left is definitely a solo Meg corner. I'm going to put his guy into a slant. Actually, give him an in route too. All right. I know he's a solo Meg corner on the backside. All right. But the front side, I want to see what's going to happen. I don't think this guy's playing Meg. Nope. He's playing mod over there. Okay. So the corner to the passing strength in this defense is playing zone coverage if his guy doesn't go deep or outside. So let's just man him up. Okay, let's just man everybody up so we don't have to worry about taking care of shallow routes or any type of in breaking dig routes from number one. Okay, so we have a three assignment man up. It's a little bit difficult. Now, the good thing about this, and I'm going to be kind of honest with you, is I would probably user this player right here for two reasons. One, I don't want to make it look just like zone so much, but I don't want to really make it look like man either. So I kind of get over here, and we talked about this from a front standpoint because we're in a too high shell. Okay, we would try to shift our line. This is not the best one to do it against. I get into my regular what do you call it dime normal here. But again, I'm going to align over here to the front side of this because it's a too high shell. I'm not going to use the backside guy on this play right now. And I just want to be here in case the guy wants to just the quarterback wants to step up and just throw the ball, just raise up and throw it, you know. But I'm not going to really move. I just know my body presence here is going to take away just the idea of let me just throw quick. But he's going to potentially see me not moving. And if number three goes vertical, he's going to say, oh, cool. I got a nice little opening right there. And we have man coverage from off, which I think is actually one of the better ways to play man coverage. So just I didn't talk about this in the cover one film so much, but sometimes you can play other defenses that actually put your safety at 10 to 7 yards and play man coverage and put him in man coverage is actually better than his normal home position at like 5 yards. Okay. So you get a really nice kind of man coverage on the right hand side, and on the left hand side, you get what we see here, just our match coverage. Now, it's important to know that if the running back was to work through the line of scrimmage and check out, all right, like this, you have to now, as your hook player, you're the only one that can match this running back coming through and going to the right. Running back goes to the left, he's going to get matched by the seam flat. Running back comes to the right, he's all yours. Okay. So this would be the way I would adjust out and play 53. Play 53 wide. We're going to play the buzz defense to the strong side. Okay. And we're going to let it rock. Now, just so you know, this is actually a cover three buzz seam. So if you ever did run this by 2x2, if you got caught, let's say they motioned and you stayed in it, it is, if you didn't make any adjustments, it is actually still seam three buzz, which is not something that Jim does a lot, versus 2x2. But just so you know, it's there for you. Now, if you go to normal, I'm normal, you're also going to get it, but it's definitely going to be zone drop because it's cover three buzz. So that's just straight up zone drop rules. Okay. But here, again, this is where, again, you have the line. This guy's a little bit further out, not the best thing in the world. This does give you a press alignment, but maybe you want to use this on third and long. Okay. So here we can do the adjustment we just talked about and man up those three guys on the right hand side. And I would definitely move your line to the right, or we could just play zone. Okay. So we have our cover three, we can play zone. Okay. So it's not going to always just be matching principles. So the two ways we can do that is by calling this defense, which is already zone. If we were in the other defense where we called 53 seam or 53 buzz seam, we could play the sticks. So playing the sticks gets everybody to go to wherever how far the sticks are. If it's at 5 yards, 10 yards, 13 yards, okay? All right, so that's one way to do that as well. All right. Another little sneaky way is if you ever do have a seam flat, you could just change this player to a curl flat assignment and it would actually change up. He just won't get any type of jam on number two if you do put him in a curl flat manually, just so you know. Okay, but that's it. So you can play it this way. You can just let it play out and just play regular cover three, spot drop cover three, which is actually not the worst thing in the world when you get guys who want to run a lot of crossing routes, not crossing routes, the dig routes. All right, they kind of pass off a guy, they don't stick to people, and then all of a sudden people are anticipating that DB is going to stick to somebody, and then he doesn't. He just basically locks them up. Okay, so that's the two ways we can do that. But we have to do it at a dime. So I would really save that, guys, for like third and long. Okay. I wouldn't really mess with it on any other situation. And that's really it from when it comes to that standpoint. I'll talk more about playing 53 zone. And then as we go through, I'll talk about 54 zone, 56 zone, maybe in its own separate video. But I do want to at least let you guys know that everything isn't match in his system. He does have some spots where he does zone drop, and that's usually on third and very long. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay. Let's jump into cover six. A little backstory on cover six. Again, Jim likes to run cover six because from his times, there was always an X receiver that was really good away from the passing stream, the solo receiver, right? In a 3-by-1 formation, let's say. So he always wanted to have a way to double team that guy, take some stress off his corners. So cover six is how he always wanted to start his quarters defense. Some people start with teaching quarters first and then introducing six. He just did it backwards, okay? And the reason why I say backwards is there are formations that he did check into quarters, okay? But cover six is not really a huge part of really the base defense. It is a nice little changeup, and in the Madden world, I'll explain to you how I think it's going to be a good changeup for us and all of the cover one that we play. This would be probably the second or third defense that we would play in base defense. But cover six is cover six. It's quarters to the passing strength. It's half field away from the passing strength. And then we can talk about it from there. We're going to be more in the 56 world, okay, than we will be in the cover six world. Just because it's a big part of what we have to do in nickel. It gives us another way to be able to play 3-by-1 formations, okay? And let's just look at some of these photos because the words that we have here that I can go through, it would take me a really long time. I'd rather teach it on the field. Okay. But there are some little things that are different in his defense and how we're going to adjust in our defense. Okay. Let me just start with the easy stuff. 2-by-2. Okay. We know passing strength is playing quarters, away from passing strength is playing over two. Okay. Now, he does have some terminology that he can do in his defense, which basically turns the cover two side into a two-man side. So we call it clamp. And all we would have to do is just man up the corner on the receiver, man up the linebacker on the tight end, and play, and just let it rock. And that would turn into a two-man version of it. Now versus 3-by-1, this is where it's going to be a little different. Jim basically played cover six. He still had obviously his quarter side to the three receiver side, except he used a modification of the coverage. He basically played quarters coverage, okay? Just pure quarters, not any type of palms as we know it. But he would still meg up number one on the outside, and he would tell his middle linebacker to run with number three if he goes vertical, okay? So that was how he played it. So there was no palms from the nickel. The safety didn't have to really read 3-2. He kind of played it more like a true zone. It was kind of a hybrid way of playing it, and it was the way that he was comfortable having us do it. And we kind of also took some of this stuff from Mike Pettin. Now, Mike Pettin did have with the Rex Ryan defense a way to play palms, okay, to this. So we had two different ways of playing it. And I think later on we kind of did get to this. We kind of do, actually, we do kind of have a way of doing it. Now, it's a little bit different than what you would see in most teams and on real, and right now, current day football. But he called it taxi, which again kind of got us into just basically a man to man situation to the quarter side, okay, and allowed this Mike linebacker to pretty much roam and just look for any type of crossing routes. So it kind of became a way of almost introducing that whole cover one mentality again to the three receiver side instead of having a nickel read it out and having a free safety read it out and play palms. They actually just played what they call taxi and just played basically man to that side. It just made it simple. I'm not going to suggest that we do that unless you really want to have some fun and just kind of mess around with people. I see the value in it, right? Especially people who want to try to take advantage of the nickel and see if he, doesn't read it out right. You can just use that taxi technique. But just from a simplicity standpoint and us playing a video game and having to do a whole lot of stuff, I'm going to just say, hey, let's just play quarters the way it is in Madden. Let's just play palms. Palms is the best of both worlds. You get kind of a pseudo taxi on vertical routes, and you get your regular quarters, kind of sort of, versus short routes. Okay. Now, another thing that he would do, this is where he would switch in and mix up some, versus empty formations. He would say, hey guys, let's play. You can play it out, or I want you to check this week into regular quarters. So that's why quarters is in there. Okay. Quarters is in there to give you an option in case you just really don't want to play cover two to the weak side and you just want to play some just regular quarters. Okay. Why would you want to do that? Well, we'll talk about it on the field some more, but let's say you come out empty, right? And you're worried about the slot receiver to the two receiver side. He's a really good player. Or the opposite team is putting their best player there to run an option route or something or a slant. Being in cover two is not the best, or maybe even cover two man, not the best. Sometimes you want to have that safety basically over the top of a linebacker, okay? And you can just basically almost double team that guy just with your base assignment, okay? You don't have to worry about him running down the field. So having quarters is more of a check. It's not really, I wouldn't, tell you guys to come out here and call that as a primary defense, like, hey, we're going to run quarters. But it's more like down the line during the game, hey, we want to check, or we just have a trouble formation. What else do we have in the toolbox? Well, let's get out of cover six, okay? So let's jump on the field. Let's watch this defense in action, and then we'll talk a little bit more about when we like to use this defense in the game. Okay, so let's get into cover six on the field. Let's talk about some little things that you need to know. Um, the first thing is if you're going to run cover six from a base defense, you're going to have to do a couple little bit of adjustments. So let's just go by formation here. I formation, all right. And if you call cover six wide, again, that's a good changeup for you, but just the game for some reason makes it so that it turns out the opposite way. It comes out like cover nine, which again you can use if you really want to get it going in your scheme. We did call cover nine against the Green Bay Packers in 2014 and pretty much shut them down. I think it was a big game for us. I remember it being like a night game or something like that. And Aaron Rodgers was not he was not ready for cloud to his passing strength, and he really struggled. So you can do that if you want, but if you want to stay in the cover six family, this is why the over wide defense when it comes to the run front. When I flip the defense, right, it turns into cover six. And you'll notice though that there's a huge gap here because technically the defense has become what? It's become an underfront because I flipped the defense. So the coverage flipped, but unfortunately so did the front. Okay. You can actually play with this 2i and this 9 technique. It's actually it's interesting. I call it a chaos style defense. You know, what you would need to do is almost get 3 players over into these gaps right here. But one way of doing that is actually just by like squeezing your D line, squeezing your linebackers or potentially bumping them over. And you can actually play football like this. It's not the most sound way, but in the Madden world, it kind of works out for us. But let's just go back to the original. Really, what I'm going to do here is what we talked about is I'm going to flip the defense, and then now I'm going to use that overall method that I use where I just squeeze the D line. Okay, so squeezing the D line pretty much does exactly, or pinching the D line gets them into the position that it's pretty much even. You almost have two-eye techniques pretty much, and you have your linebackers in that position. And if you want to just do what we always did, we just use the backside guy. That's why I'm kind of nudging him so he doesn't actually get involved in the shift. And I just spread my linebackers and boom, right? So we're kind of in that same situation. There is a little bit of an open gap over here. I see it, the B gap. But honestly, it's still pretty good. Why? Because you're playing quarters to the side of the to that open gap. That's where the safety is. So in this defense, we squeeze the line, we spread the linebackers, whatever. But now you also have a quarter safety sitting back there, right here, who's also going to help you out in some of the run fits and be another presence, even though it's not as fast as it used to be. So again, you can call this defense versus pro formation like this. Just flip it to make it a cover six. And then from the coverage standpoint, you got your quarters, and then we got your half field over here. Now, just pay attention to all these coverages, how the half field corner plays. Sometimes they're a soft squat, sometimes they're a cloud flat. I like the cloud flat. I feel like this year they actually do get a good jam on number two and try to reroute them, which I think is what you need. Okay, but you can also use the clamp rule and put man-to-man coverage on them and rock it out. And then if you want to use the backside guy like I always do, then we can now also I will just take any type of route that comes from the backfield to the left, and I would just man it up myself. Okay. So that's cover six. You don't get the good disguise, unfortunately. Anybody who knows that you're playing cover six is going to know because the half field side looks different. But I do believe that you could back this guy up and use some other techniques and play some soft squat or play some hard flat. We kind of get the corner backed up. You could mess around with this. And especially since how the front starts like this, and then all of a sudden, we are switching it, they're not quite sure. Okay. So let me just give you, I don't want to make this into a disguise video, but let me just show you what I did there. It's something of a little trick that I do use sometimes versus people that key the corners. Take a look at this. I'm just coming out in pro formation because it's easy to see. Right now, the right corner is down, right? And the left corner is back. I can actually right now just back up my left corner, who's a quarter's quarter, right? And then when I flip it, he's not going to come all the way down. He's going to kind of come back to like 6, 7 yards. So people can't really tell that he's a cloud corner. Now, the only bad thing is that you miss out on getting a good jam on the guy. You're not going to be able to jam the receiver because you're over 5 yards. And in the Madden world, I know that doesn't matter, but still, you're not going to get a jam like you would if you were in 5 yard position. Okay. But that's that coverage. Now, if you want to play that versus slot formation, I would be very careful with calling that defense because the defense in general is not it's not a man defense. We're not using man align like we do sometimes. Some people like to use it in the Wade Phillips defense. So if you run this defense versus slot formation, you're going to have a walked out linebacker. Okay. And now you see that huge B gap as well. So you can use the squeeze the D line technique if you want, but it's not going to, you still have a really, you kind of have a little bit of an issue just with your natural alignment. All right. So just be aware. Honestly, this is the reason why playing nickel defense is better honestly in today's football versus any type of two back slot formations as well as one back slot formations. But just slot formations where there's a guy in the slot, it's better to play some sort of nickel defense because that nickel takes care of that right away. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. Now, if you want to play over, okay, over has cover six as well versus pro formation. I think it's pretty normal, right? So we actually do get our normal look here. And when we talk about the coverage in the front, we'd like that, we want the seven technique to maybe take away a power play or inside zone play. But again, you would need to probably just spread your linebacker over there on the right hand side, just get him outside in that D gap. Okay, so this is a little bit different than obviously playing the regular wide nine, but you might like this. Now, there is one adjustment though you got to that you have to know that if you want to play over, and I actually like this adjustment versus a slot formation. Watch what happens when I call cover six here. All right. So we get that same looking alignment there. Well, one thing is I would rather this front, not be in an over front right now. I want the three technique. I don't want the three technique to be to the tight end. I think it's overkill. We have an extra player over here that's pretty much doing nothing in a sense. So he's an overhang player. So we kind of have enough numbers on the right hand side, right? So I would rather be in an under front. I'd rather the front be shifted the opposite direction. So I've noticed this for some reason. If you flip the front twice, it will give it to you. So I think it's something that's broken in Madden and it kind of fixes itself. So if you actually flip the front one time, flip your defense one time, what happens is the coverage changes, but the front doesn't move for whatever reason. So now we're actually in that cover nine look. We don't want to be in cover nine. We want to be in cover six. So now we're going to go flip it again. And when you flip it again, the coverage goes back to cover six. And now the front moves. So the front gives you an under front, which is the three technique away from the tight end, gives you the shade technique over here to the tight end side. And you're in a lot better position now to play some runs that are coming this way over here. A lot of people like to run plays like blast and things like that. And your walked out linebacker doesn't have an interior gap anymore. Okay, so the A gap is taken by Mosley. Okay, and then over here on the right hand side, we have our linebacker playing the B gap. We have another overhang player as our force defender, and we're in good shape. So playing the over front versus slot formations is something cool. If you want to play cover six, you can get that working for you, and you can let your linebacker walk out and feel comfortable when you're in an under front. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, and then after that, guys, we do have quarters coverage. So when would you use it really versus um 12 or 21 personnel? I'm thinking more of a ace formation, okay? And we get halfback blunt dive or something like that. And we come out versus the formation. We don't really want to be in cover one. We can't call cover three, right? So this is a time that now I'm going to come out over wide. I'm probably going to call quarters, with the silly alignment that we talked about up front. So I'm going to have to end up squeezing my front and I'm going to widen my linebackers because I have seven techniques and I need guys to play outside because our safeties do not fit fast anymore in Madden. So this is the reason why we have to look like this, and that's it. But you're in a balanced set and you're playing quarters, okay? You do have cover six as an option. So let's say you want to kind of take away a really good receiver on the right hand side. We're going to squeeze the D line. We're going to spread the linebackers, and we have cover six. So it's actually another option that we have. We can play that versus that front. We can also do it versus, let's say we get over cover 6 versus some sort of ace pair formation, right? So now we want to play quarters to the right hand side, but we know that versus this formation here, ace pair, we want to be in over. So what we do is what we keep the D line. We got the 7 technique, and we're going to just move my linebacker here and not get him involved in the outside linebacker shift. At least now we have a guy who's playing head up on the wing, and then hopefully the safety can come up and fit pretty well. So that's how I would play cover 6 versus some of the 3x1 sets where it's a 12 personnel, or if that was like I would do the same thing versus like halfback strong, okay, and I get over here cover 6, right? We're good against the pass, good against the run, and we're straight there, and we just say that we're just going to spread our linebackers a little bit on the right hand side. We're good. So that's how I will line up. So against base personnel, you do have options here. This is more when you play a team that has a good tight end or a good X receiver, and you want to kind of double team, you want to get some real good coverage over the top of them. That's what I would jump into. All right. Now, if you are going to go up against 21 personnel a lot too, and you get a lot of I formation slots, I would also consider using big nickel or any of the nickel packages. Okay. And now you can call any coverage you want, but this is also one here that cover 6 gives you a nice little change up. So we're playing cover 6 here. So the power of playing nickel is what? Pretty much your Sam linebacker, or your, in this case, the will linebacker, is a nickel. So he's going to always align to what? Where the slot is. So now you can line up like this, and you can disguise your coverages a lot better out of nickel coverage than you could out of base coverage. Okay. You could play cover 1 from here. You could play cover 6. You could play cover 4. Offense doesn't know, even though they're in 21 or 12 personnel. So that's the reason why in today's football, and I made that video about the big nickel is the answer to a lot of teams that want to try to unlock your defense and find out what you're in. But if you play nickel and you feel comfortable playing with 3 safeties on the field, then you could potentially do that. Okay, so that's where we are. From a run game standpoint, this is all the same rules that we've talked about. So this is over. You don't have to really make any changes. I wouldn't squeeze the over front necessarily, but if you want to, you can. All right, just to make sure you take care of the inside plays. But from a run game standpoint, I'm going to use the linebacker that's in the open A gap, right? Open B gap. Be a little closer. Be ready to take on the power. Inside zone play. And if they run outside zone, they might crease you a little bit, but you do have some pretty good. Don't worry about what you see on the film here. They do have some pretty good. We do have leverage out here with the corner. Okay, so we're in good shape. Okay, so let's talk about, and I can line up obviously nickel versus all the 12 personnel sets too. Okay, it's pretty easy to see. You do lose some of the disguise here, but let me actually show you something that I would do. I would play quarters, but also I would consider, yeah, I would probably play more quarters. Let's just be straight up about that. I think I would just play more quarters to 2 tight end sets. I was going to try to show you the disguise that I would use, but I would consider doing this, guys. Let's say I play, I'm going to go back to big nickel in a second. Let's say I play a team that comes out of ace formation. It could be deuce close. It could be a tight formation as well, too. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be versus spread. But I have here in big nickel, one of my checks is quarters. Okay, that's one of the big things I like to do in big nickel. So I would walk down the safety like this, and I would play a variety of different coverages, right? Versus a formation like this. I would play cover, I would send the pressure once we get to the pressures. I would also play cover 1 if I wanted to. I would play cover 3 seam. We already talked about that. And then the last thing I would do is play some quarters. So when you play quarters, you see how nobody moved? Like really, the safeties didn't go back into their quarters alignment, but look at their assignments. They're playing quarters from a cover 3 look. So that's a really good thing. That's something that we can kind of play around with. We like that. We know that this safety here has number 2, the tight end, if he goes vertical. This safety has number 2 if he goes vertical. So that can really disguise some people and mess people up. And this is how you could play single high defense, but play split safety coverage. So if let's say you're in a league and the league says, well, declare what your coverage system is and you're going to say, I'm a single high guy, that's fine because you should be able to come out and walk up like that and check into different coverages. Okay. All right. Let's get into some of the one back spread formations and just gun stuff. All right. Because we're going to be in that world a whole lot. Cover six, cover six. Cover six for him again, 2x2. If we do get into a formation that's spread 2x2, which you're going to see a lot, I would definitely consider taking this guy, manning him up, taking this guy, manning him up. That's a really great adjustment right there. You're playing two man to the backside, okay? Especially if you're worried about a team running four verticals. That would be one of the first things that people could try to do to you is run four verticals. The answer, especially if you're in cloud defense, right? This backside corner is playing cloud. But if you guys noticed, different fronts have different corner adjustments. This one is actually a soft squat and a vertical hook. So if we do get four verticals versus this type of look with nobody going to the flat, we're going to get actually those guys playing underneath and playing with those guys and running with them and matching. Okay. So that's what I was saying. Whatever cover six you run, just be aware of what the backside technique is. If for some reason this is a cloud corner or you change it to a cloud corner, right, and a team wants to run four verticals again, it's a little bit, it's going to be a little bit tougher, potential if that outside receiver gets outside of the corner. Let me do that again. I think I didn't put him in a fade. Sometimes you can fade your receiver or you can just run him on a streak. Okay, so boom, put up. There we go. All right, so that's that. I'm gonna take a look at, this is where maybe somebody might try to get you and throw a ball down the sideline. So that's where playing soft squat or playing clamp two man can help you versus 2x2 sets. Okay. Um, From a front standpoint, we talked about this already. I don't have to really review it. This is split safety coverage. Okay. So when it's split safety coverage, I don't usually like to play on the backside of the formation unless it's like this where the tight end is in line. Because the tight end's in line, I got two backers in the box. But if it was a formation where the tight end was walked out, okay, like this, I'm kind of stuck here, in my opinion, to play with the linebacker in the box, unless it's a passing down and I don't care about the run. Okay. So I would still shift the line away from the running back, but now I'm going to play on the opposite side of the running back. And if it is, this is a draw play, so it can go anywhere. But if it was an inside zone, I'll be a lot better shape. Okay. But you're not in great shape overall. I know that. And I did talk to you about the disguise. I'm bringing up things that were in the disguise menu. But here, if you wanted to try to show that single high disguise out of the nickel wide that I told you guys about by just using show blitz, it's okay, but just be aware that now this is your half field player playing at 5 yards. I don't like that at all. Okay, so this is where I would consider maybe checking in the quarters. Okay, and this is you want to use the disguise here. Let me use the one where I'm going to have the corners. I'm going to back them up first. Then I'm going to show the disguise. Okay, and when I show that nice little cover three disguise, cover one shell disguise, at least I'm playing quarters where everybody just has to worry about their ones or their twos. Okay, so that's that. We don't have to have any deep half safeties playing up close. But that's how we can kind of mess around with a little bit of playing cover four and cover six to 2x2. Now let's jump into the 3x1 world where we're going to be probably living a whole lot because a lot of people love 3x1. So now you have the option of playing really cover six. Again, is the Jim Schwartz way. We want to make sure that the back, a lot of people don't, a lot of people say in my quarter scheme, I got to have a lockdown solo corner. Well, not in his. He doesn't need a lockdown solo corner. So you don't have to put your best corner really on the left side of the field. I would really consider putting your best corner on the right side of the field. Okay. Or in the slot. So in general, now you can do all the same adjustments. You can man this guy up if you want to, and you can man this guy up and play two man. That's clamp. The other one I was talking to you guys about was playing a version of cone. So you could take the outside corner. You could just play man to man if you want and put him outside leverage, or you could put him into an outside quarter. Okay, and then now take your safety and user this guy. And if he runs any type of in breaking route, you take it like this. right? And you sit right there and you just take the in part of the in breaking routes. So it's like a double team that way. Or you can go with the good old cover two version. And again, if you're going to play the cover two version, I would consider pressing. But just for time's sake, I'm not going to do that right now. We could just, I don't need to use that player if I'm playing cover two. We could just kind of play it out that way. Okay. Now, the front side, I said, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to play to the quarter side of 3x1. I'm going to play it out like palms since it works well again. But Jim Schwartz would actually just take it and you can leave number one alone because he's in Meg. He would actually just man up these guys and play a version of Taxi sometimes. So that would just take care of that. And that's also really good if you really are worried about people beating you with some type of palms beater. You're just going to end up playing it like palms, but you're playing it more sure because you're manning it up. So that's a nice little option that I never really talked about until I started doing this video. I kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. Or if you want to play quarters, okay? So like I said, you just want to play quarters. You know, the backside safety is poaching. He doesn't have a poach safety in his backside of his defense, okay? So that's where it's a little bit different. Um, I can't really replicate how he would do this with still having match principles. Let me just try something. If I put this safety into, hmm, I see I can't put him into any type of thing else. This is something I'm going to use for another video, so I'm not going to really worry about this part right here, right now. But I'm just thinking about putting him into a middle third. I know we're kind of bastardizing it. We're playing quarters. We have all the quarters rules here, but nobody's going to take number three unless I run with them. But having that safety back there in the middle third makes me feel a little bit better that I don't have to continue to run with them. Anyway, I just kind of made up a way to play Jim Schwartz's area, which is playing quarters over here to the right hand side. But the bad thing is that I'm not doing a good job on the left hand side. So forget what I said. I guess you can call quarters. I can do this real quick if I want to make a real complicated video here. Quarters and then cloud flat and then take this guy and put him on a deep half. Make sure you're going the right way, please. So you can end up playing it like that, you know, and now you're playing quarters. But now you have this player here. He has to go vertical hook. That's fine. So you can end up playing quarters and checking the whole backside to a cover two. And then now you have to run up with number three, okay? Because nobody else is going to run up with them. That's the way that we would have played it with Jim Schwartz's system. It would have been a little bit of a tougher ask. That's why we actually did play a lot of that taxi technique or palms, you know, an old school way of playing palms a lot more than I remember. But now it's starting to come back to me, okay? So that's that. If we get empty formations, right, we pretty much know it's cover two on one side, palms in the other. I won't show that right now. Now, 3x1 nub has always been a problem, but in our defense, we do kind of feel good about this because of two reasons. One reason is we have the ability to play a wide nine, right? And then we can obviously shift the line this way. So we feel good about the run front. I'm not really overly concerned with it. So I don't mind walking a backer out here and playing cover six and going after a bubble. Okay, I think I'll take my chances there if I feel like this, but I probably wouldn't call this on 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2 anyway. Okay, I would call this on a passing down or maybe 1st and 10 versus a really good passing team. Okay, so that's that. But we do know that we are playing a version of Taxi, or as we call Palms. But if you really wanted to get funky, you could do this. Okay, and you can get that going. Right. So that's that. Now, another thing you can do versus this formation that this playbook allows you to do is really live in the um, big nickel world versus this formation. Okay. Let's just say I call cover six. Right. Let me explain to you why I'm thinking this. If you haven't seen these videos from the past, you see how. Okay. So, like I talked about, you can actually call one of these cover these blitz defenses like weak blitz 3 or weak blitz 1. And versus this formation, that gives you the nice little underfront, right? And also gives you a little disguise. But now when you check out to any other defense, the coverage changes, the front doesn't move. And then new to this year, Madden 24, we can now get our safety. If you don't like him being in that position, like you can actually let him play half field from this position. Really, why? Because if the tight end goes vertical or on a corner, he's going to be right there. And if the tight end runs underneath on the shallow, he's going to he might surprise somebody who's trying to run a deep over route. So that's something to think about. But if you don't like that, you could do two things. You could just back your defense up. Back in the day, you couldn't do that, right? You could press your defense as well. You could have done all these different things just to get those situations, to get the defense back to what it was, okay? So again, if I walked into this thing, let me just get this thing right. We did the walk. The beginning of this defense looked like this, right? And then now we check the cover six, and I would probably choose, let's go press, right? To get that look. And then maybe pre snap, I might just back off the corner or back off the nickel, whatever it might be. So now we got our cover six defense. And again, if you want to play that good old taxi rule, just man up this guy, and then that's it. You don't have to worry about the other outside corner because he's playing Meg already. And now we could just play ball from here. So this would be how he would have ran the defense back in 2014 if you see it on film. This is what it would have looked like. Okay. So very aggressive quarter style based defense. I love it. Some of this stuff came from the Michigan State team from back in the early 2010s. We got the name of that coordinator. I don't know if he's still there, but they ran a lot of the match quarters, press quarters scheme, and it was really good. All right, so that gives you a little bit of something to battle some of these guys that are going to come out and nub as their main offense because it's a very simple offense to gain a lot of yards and not have to think a lot. To be honest with you, and all right, if we get any type of stack formations, this is where now we're going to get into our videos that we've been doing talking about stacks. But if we play cover six. Over here to the left, we got the quarter side. So we can just do what I talked about in the video that I put out yesterday. Okay, we could just play our triangle. So go check that out on Patreon, right? I talked about how we could play triangle versus this look. If we don't, we can always go back to what we did back in September. We could just man up this side, okay, and just play quarters. Now, one of my Patreon guys hit me up yesterday and was talking about how he doesn't really on this because the safety here doesn't do a good job of really like playing outside routes. He doesn't do a good job of playing seven routes. We know that, right? So he would use this guy, and then on the routes that we get, he would kind of leverage to the outside, knowing that the DBs do a decent job of leveraging to the inside naturally. So that's something that you can do, but you could turn your quarter side into basically quarters man. You could turn it into two man. This is becoming more like how Fangio runs his defense. It's become popular with Fangio, but a lot of people were doing this stuff before Fangio, coming up with different rules. I think what he did that was really cool is that he kind of made the rules into names, made it into a system that everybody can kind of play with. But I can essentially call cover six and make it like two man. This is the reason why two man is not that important in a lot of people's defenses because we can turn cover six or cover four into a two man coverage, okay? And just play out. And I'm just going to watch the three receiver hook player and essentially just man them up. So that's a lot of adjustments. But if you have somebody on offense who's making a million adjustments, then you start making a million adjustments. Have some fun, right? So versus stacks, you know that. And then versus the dreaded bunch formations, you got to have a check for bunch or a way to play bunch. Okay. I don't have a lot in my book right now I'm working with. But if I'm playing a team that comes out in bunch and I want to come out and cover six, I'm going to use this one. I'm going to flip, obviously, here, right? So now we have over here a bunch situation, right? I talked about this in my video. You could just play it out. You can just man up number one if you want. That gives you the best overall assignment. Everybody's going to be a sound assignment. Now the leverage might get kind of screwed up on corner routes versus your safety. But you can also play the adjustment I made yesterday. It's not really, I didn't do it out of base, but I can. I would just man up number three with the three receiver hook player, and then I would just play triangle with the corner and the safety on one and two. Right? We can live in that world. So I didn't realize I didn't flip the defense. So it would be over here and we'd be doing it to this side. Okay. Now, one last thing I didn't mention, I should have mentioned when I had the nub formation up. I'll do it from, let's see if I have a, let's just do it from let's do it from nub. Let's do it from the 3x1 nub. Okay. The good old problem that we talked about in, different defenses and whatnot. Like if you're in quarters, you're in cover three, you're playing seam or whatever. But just in general, one of my answers that I have been using for a while now is versus compression sets or versus nub sets like this. So we don't get any glitches or any problems. I'm not going to call out of cover threes or anything like that. I'm going to call more cover two to nub. So having this backside over here be a cover two naturally takes away a lot of the routes you get, which is 7 routes, things like that. The corner does a good job of sticking on underneath it, and usually the safety gets over there as well. But cover two on the backside of a nub is pretty cool. And then obviously if you're playing against a team that goes 2x2 with the weak side being kind of close, you can get the same result. All right. Trying to think if there's anything else right now. And I think that's pretty much it, guys. I didn't go into dime. We have it here in dime. So this is the thing. This playbook is very sound that every single front that we have here, our major fronts that we use, we have those main coverages. So far it's cover one. We're missing a couple of the cover threes here when it comes to the over front. But we are going to be in big nickel. We have cover one, cover three, and now we have cover four and cover six. And the next coverage is coming up will be cover two and all the two-man stuff. So we have that in nickel, in dime as well. So if you get caught out there with somebody that wants to come out and spread you out in a 4 wide receiver set, well, we have an answer for that, right? Okay, so this is one of the first times I've seen this here. I didn't talk about it in 3 buzz, okay, but let's just take a look real quick at cover six. We're going to get this alignment that's a little bit funky because the formation is 3x1, okay? And I'm sorry, 4x1. And versus 4x1, you're going to lose your matching principles over here on the right-hand side. Match is automatically turned off versus 4x1. And people know that. Some people take advantage of that, okay? So if you do get a 4x1 set and you are in cover six and you didn't realize it, I would suggest to check out of it to either buzz seam, or cover one robber, right? Or whatever it might be. I wouldn't suggest to stay in it because you're pretty much losing that. The only reason why I would stay in this is if you don't mind playing a little bit of the zone defense that we haven't talked about yet. So he does call sometimes cover six zone. And we can do that by just turning off match or by playing the sticks. Okay, so right here, I'm just actually going to press play the sticks. Now, because of the 4x1 in this formation, they try to make it look like man. So since you're playing the sticks anyway, I would just maybe consider, where is it at here? I would consider just changing his assignment. Can't do it that way. Let me get the linebacker over. I just did a shift for the linebacker, moved him over, so it wouldn't be illegal in my league. Yeah. Put him in a hook curl, and then just take your own player here and just have yourself play the hook curl. You don't even have to really make any changes. Just come over here and just play this. And you're playing a zone drop defense anyway. I would definitely watch number two, right? So that would be okay. But you can't match versus 4x1, most 4x1 sets, okay? Most of them, not with that coverage, okay? So just be aware of that. But if this is also just a regular trips formation, which is what I kind of expected there, I wasn't even expecting that coverage. You're going to get your normal alignment and we're good to go. Okay, so all the same thing is there. It's just now we're doing it out of the dime package. All right, so I like this coverage. I think it's very interesting because in my offense, I use cover 9, I use palms, I use quarters, and I use cover six. So I use all 4 of them and I use them for different situations. And I kind of probably become very predictable. Sometimes using one coverage or two makes you have to make little manual adjustments to them, which actually confuses your opponent probably even more than just having a specific coverage that you like to run. Okay. All right. So that's it for cover six, guys. I would just look into it and then also use it on third downs, either it be third and medium, third and long, 2-minute situations. And then you think about using some of that zone drop cover 6 as well. If you do use that, just make sure you watch the seam of number 2, like that little route that I showed you. A lot of people like to just pump that route in there and try to get a little easy little seam route against you. Okay. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next part of the video. Okay, we're going to talk about cover 2 right now, and we're going to go through some of the other coverages. We're going to group them together in this last part of the video because a lot of them are pretty much in the same category: third and long defenses or third down defenses, and a lot of them they all have that too high shell. So let's start with cover 2. Cover 2 is just our base 5 under 2 deep defense, Tampa style matching principles with the inside players. Okay, corners are going to be funneling number 1 inside, and all the terms and adjustments are there for you to take a look at. When we look at the formation that we're going to be in, we're going to be in our over wide formation and our over formation when we're in base personnel. This is really good. So this gives us a nice little change up to some of the formations that some of the looks that we've been in with the single high defense. And also, it really gives us a nice little cover 2 on both sides to compression sets. Guys in my Patreon who know me have talked about this length. This year it's cover 2 plays a lot better. The safeties have a lot more range. The corners get back with more depth. So just in general, they do a better job versus all formations, including the compression stuff. And we know if we want to be a match team or a man team, compression is our enemy. So we have to have answers to that. And outside of the answers that we have out of cover 4, it's playing straight cover 2 and maybe even backing your corners up. It's something that can help you against compression formations, okay? So we have it in base out of all of our sets. We also have it obviously out of nickel and dime. That's where we're going to be living in the most. We're going to use this potentially on third and long. That's going to be the time we're going to use it. When I jump into Madden, I'll give you some little tips to try to make it better, try to improve the coverage. But again, Tampa 2 is Tampa 2, okay? We also do have one of our fronts. I believe it's in one of our dime fronts, if I'm not mistaken, or actually it could be our nickel front. One of our nickel fronts has a drop for you here, so you can take one of your D linemen and drop him out into the middle hole, or you can actually assign him to whatever you want, like you see on this picture. Cover 55 was Jim Schwartz's way of playing 2-man, 2 under, hard body choke. That's what we called it. You know, 2 guys over the top, cover 2 with 2-man under. Like, this is something that I think in Madden is probably one of the better defenses that I know personally I need to use some more on third and extra long. I need to have an answer for just guys who just want to go down the field. If they have a 2-man beater, let me see it. Let them prove it to me. And let me go use the D line and let me get after the quarterback's ass. Okay. That's what I'm going to end up doing a lot on 55. But this is just generic choke, as we called it here, or just basically 2-man, man under with the corners and the nickel playing heavy inside leverage, okay, with 2 safeties over the top. Then we have cover 57 or cover 7. So we would use this primarily only out of the nickel personnel. And this is a third down call. Okay. And what we're trying to do here is play bracket coverage. So bracket coverage is kind of similar to double teaming somebody. But if they work away from your leverage, then you free up. Okay, so that's pretty much what happens here on 57. It's a big coverage in the Nick Saban off defense and also in the Belichick defense, something that you can use on third and medium, even on third and long if you really want to, if you know that a team really wants to get the ball to somebody. But also, it's a really good coverage that you can use in the red zone as well. So this would be something that I'll talk about on the field. I'll give you one way that I like to play it, my generic way of playing it, trying to get at least 2 double teams or at least 1.5 double teams. But honestly, you can really work this coverage however which way you want. And you can see here, like, this is one of the plans that we had. Just versus 2x2, just a generic plan to try to take away the 2 inside guys, and then versus 3x1. Let's take away the inside slot player and let's help out on the X. Okay. We go into different games with different strategies, and throughout the game, we can change it up and all that good stuff. So 57 is probably one of my more favorite defenses. And then you can actually mix the 2 defenses together. You can play half cover 5 and half cover 7 if you feel like that's what you want to get done. But just make sure that when we jump into Madden, I'll talk about making sure that your corners are in the proper leverage and their technique of playing underneath or over the top is being used. Okay. I'll see you on the Madden field. Okay, guys, so I just want to make sure you guys understand where Tampa 2 is in the playbook and just reminding you to keep match on. Match does affect Tampa 2, the way the drops are when it comes to some of the interior drops. So just make sure you understand that. But if you have any questions, just hit me up on that specifically. But we do have Tampa 2 and 43 over wide. We have it in 43 over. I don't have it in under. I don't think it's in the playbook actually on Madden. We have it in all of our nickel packages. So you're always going to have a Tampa 2. Just make sure that when you click on Tampa 2, that you know which type of Tampa it is. So some of them are built with the corners playing the hard flats, or not the hard flats, the cloud flats, which means that they're going to be a funnel technique. They're going to jam number one inside or try to reroute him outside and sink back to the high part of the flat zone and then work back down late once the ball is thrown. Okay, we have our middle read player. Okay, he's going to hunt up pretty much to the passing strength is where he looks most of the time, and he's going to try to get underneath number two. We have our vertical hook players here, which it depends on the formation and it depends on the routes that we get. Sometimes these guys will actually run up with number two. Actually, I apologize. They will not run up with number two when there is a middle read player. Okay. So we can talk more about this technique in general, but what I like to do on third down, because this is when I use it, I will just deep blue this guy, okay, especially because we're in third and long. And I try to use one of the two interior players here, one of the hook players. And the reason why is I just want to make sure I can get back to depth, take away a lot of the dig routes, and also try to be able to cover a lot of the space that maybe this player has left in the middle of the field. So when somebody wants to check it down to like a angle route or something like that, that's what I usually do. I also do sometimes jump into using the turning off, basically semi turning off match by taking my curl flats and putting them back to like 25 or 30. I'm sorry, not my curl flats, my flats, and put them back to like 25 or 30 yards. Okay. So what that does is now turn your cover two really into a zone dropping cover two. And again, I might deep blue the middle as well, but what I'm trying to get now is almost a five deep. I do also back up the corners a little bit because I feel like if you play them at 5 yards, they don't get to the depth that they need to quick enough. But when I run a route versus this, let's say if I ran, there's enough, these routes are going deep enough. You know, it almost looks like we're playing cover five, okay? Like we have five deep guys. And what it does a good job of is just making sure that if you're in a really long situation, you're going to make sure that the corner routes are taken care of by the number twos, okay? But also, because that is such an easy defense to work out and you can just mix that in here and there, I do just enjoy playing regular cover too, where everybody's actually trying to jam, the outside corners are trying to jam. And I do believe that does slow down some of the receivers. Let's take a look at it real quick. So I'm going to run double post real quick. All right. And if I run this route, oh, wait, I still have the adjustment on. Excuse me. That's one thing you got to remember. That's why I don't actually like doing too many adjustments with the coaching adjustments because sometimes I forget and then the next thing I know, I'm one play behind. Okay, so let's just turn this off. Go back to default. All right, but let's just run. One of my favorite plays right here on the left hand side. Okay, and just in general, those corners do funnel the outside guys wider, or they slow them down sometimes. Okay, but definitely look at your attributes of your corners. That's going to help you there. So cover two is good versus all formations. I would use it even versus empty, and I would use it even versus teams that come out in the dreaded empty quads. Okay, if somebody came out of empty quads, which I can't really produce right now, but this is a 4-by-1 formation. Okay, empty quads does kind of it makes it tough on your defense, but 4-by-1 in general makes it pretty tough on your defense. All right. You're also not going to get, a lot of the pure jams that you would get. The match coverages are kind of turned off in this situation. So if this was a kind of version of 3-by-1 right now, I would again take my middle linebacker and put him in a deep blue. All right. And of course, here I'm going to definitely potentially probably use this strong side hook player. Okay. And I'm just going to try to make sure I get in the window to take away a lot of these underneath routes. I'm pretty much playing from the far hash all the way over to the numbers. Like I'm playing from numbers, okay, and I'm responsible for all of this, okay. That's one of the ways I like to play it. I like to sometimes play it from the strong side and sneak up on people who want to throw like slants and crossing routes and stuff. But you can also use this player as well. Be careful though, 4x1 with your corners on the outside. They guys might, get into 4x1 or some type of 1-4 split and just try to throw a seam route right past them. Let me get off this corner and show you. There's a lot of times, even though there's nobody really threatening, there's not going to be a jam here. So guys are just trying to squeeze that in there. But the cloud corner still does a good job of getting that depth. Like I said, they work to the top of that flat route zone. So they're not going to just sit there and stop. All right. So you should still be pretty good. Overall, cover two is really probably the best third and long defense you have. You're probably going to call that one more than any other one. All right. So we have it in all coverages, all fronts that are important to us. And then we also have it, I think I even have it in big nickel. Yep. This is the one where we have a dropper on this one. So this is the 52 drop, right? So we have one of the D tackles falling out here. So that helps you out if you want to maybe take away a little shallow route or something like that, something underneath. It's a pretty good coverage, okay? But again, just check all your cover twos and check the corners assignments and make sure you know what they are, and that's going to help you out a lot. It's also in dime, and it's also in that's it. It's also in the dime package, okay? Okay, let's go to cover two man, which really, again, I'm just going to show you the coverage and just kind of how I would work it. I would probably potentially use more of this type of cover two man and dime rush, even if I know a team is coming out with a good, just a regular tight end and he's in line. I still want to, come out and get my best cover guys on there. So whoever your dime is, make sure it's a big corner or make sure it's a safety that can run. That's what I kind of prefer. Little guys are cool, but then you don't get the matchup that you would want on tight ends. But in general, guys, if you come out in this formation, just let it rock. Okay. You can make adjustments. I know I've heard some people say they still want to go with their on defense. They still want to um, press down, or I'm sorry, play underneath and play inside, make those two coverage adjustments right before the snap. But honestly, I think you can just let it play out. I haven't seen any issues with this. Okay. Um, who do you user? Don't user these safeties, man. I know people try to sit here and try to cheat and play two man. You have to understand the corners are playing low and inside leverage, so they're going to get beat over the top pretty easy. Okay, they're trying to take away all inside breaking routes, and they're trying to play underneath. Okay, so that's one thing. So what I would actually suggest, and what I'm going to start doing some more, is playing a little bit more two man in some situations. I'm just going to use in one of the D tackles. Okay, so now you can start playing some stuff. We can start talking about what to do with defensive tackles on the snap, but we can start trying to, work some games and trying to work outside with our defensive line. Try to get some of that pressure that it's hard to get. Okay, I think by now a lot of us have done a lot of the drills for for the league. For every game you could do drills, and I think everybody by now has done the darn pass rush drill. So I think the timing of working that little swim move around somebody, or to get around a blocker, I think you guys have probably worked that enough. Okay, but I think this is a horrible example of two man pass rush. But anyway, the whole point is use this to your advantage. Now, another thing that I would do as well, and I have to check this out. I would call. Let me do it out the box here. Something I like to do because I like to disguise my stuff up a little bit. I would call. Let's just call cover two, okay? And I come out versus a 2x2 set, and I back everybody up. When I back everybody up, it just kind of causes a little confusion, a little bit of what's going on, and definitely people are going to think this guy's playing zone coverage. So at this point now, I would check into two man. I don't have two man here. Okay. I would make sure it's one of my audibles. Okay. But I would check into two man. This is cover one robber press, but now nobody's pressing. Okay. So we would play catch two man. So let me just go make that change. I don't have two man as a play that I would do this to. I have more one robber press, but you can always change that in your audibles. Let me just make sure this works here perfectly. So I would back everybody up, right? I know it's cover two. I just want to make sure everybody's backed up. I want to show that I was in a zone and then I just backed up, especially if it's cover two and I'm playing a lot of that. Show the cover two for a half a second, then back up and then check into two man. Okay, and you see how they play at 5 yards? So now you're going to get still underneath an inside technique, but they're going to play it from a little bit further back. Okay, I can see there the corner did not do a good job. The only thing I don't like is they don't get hands on people. But what we're trying to do is get people who are thinking that it's going to be a zone, and all of a sudden you got guys running with people. It's probably best, to be honest with you, for teams that want to go deep on you and teams that want to run crossing routes against you, okay? Because that could kind of confuse them. Let's take a look at one example real quick of a crossing route concept that could potentially make people upset. All right, so let's go with I'm gonna go with this one here. No, that's not good. Let's go with double post, okay? So we call cover two, right? We come out, people see it for a second. Next thing you know, you back everybody up, and then now we just call cover two man because we don't want them to press. All right. So let's just see how the routes develop down the field, how far the separation is. It's the same old separation that I've noticed also, and this is coming from one of my Patreon guys who talked about this to me the other day, and it's so true. The inside leverage of the corners, they do a good job. They try to play inside leverage more than they have in the past. Okay. So they do a good job at that. But that's just one little change up that I might do once or twice a game. I'm not going to live in that world too much, but it's just something else. I think it's better to just call two man this year. If somebody has a two-man beater, God bless them. Just try to get your pass rush on. Maybe you can try to work on some of your D-line moves, okay? All right, so we can work on that. Now, the last part here is working 57, okay? So let's just stay here in this dime package. So the complement, if you want to call two-man, but now we're not going to play two-man, is called 57, all right? If you trust your corners to play man-to-man from press position, just leave them alone, okay? If you don't, what I would do is automatically make a coverage adjustment and play over the top. Okay, what that does, if I'm playing one robber like I am right now, that just makes sure that the corners don't press and they play a motor mirror technique. Okay, they just shadow the guy. All right. So, but if you do have guys that have good press, you can just let them press and see how they do. I think the corners in the game press pretty well versus inside breaking routes. They did get in good position versus goes and outside breaking routes. They can kind of get lost. Okay, so just be aware of that. But why are we doing this? Well, we want to get double teams, okay? We want to get double teams on probably the inside receivers for sure. Okay, so one way that I do this personally, okay, is I basically keep the hook player in the middle of the field, okay? Because from him to double team somebody, for me to actually take him and double team him on, let's say, a tight end or something, it's not the best result unless I feel good if I was using this linebacker, okay, and I know that off man coverage does a pretty good job from this position on outside breaking routes. So I'm gonna now just double team and just kind of like take away this inside route, knowing that if he was to run outside, now the safety would have him. So that's kind of how I like to work my double teams. I like to have the deep player come down and play man, understand his weakness, and I'll take away the other part of his of the coverage. Okay, so from that position, that's how I would double team him. But unfortunately, you can't use her two different places. So I actually let this guy a lot of times just rock out and just play ball. And what I try to do is I try to go outside shade, okay, with my all of my coverage. Now I do know that right now in this formation is not great, but I'm hoping that this player, this DB, will go outside shade from that position. All right. Usually what happens is it's usually against the guy that's removed, so it's a little bit easier. But I know that what's kind of happening is that if the tight end runs a route in the middle and that DB does play outside shade, that we're going to get kind of a natural double team right there. So that's what I usually do with that hole player. Okay, I let him play the hole, and he's going to help out whatever receiver is pretty much closest to his side in 2x2. What I do on the other side is I like to double team the slot. Oops, my fault. Let me just get out of this. So I will try to double team the slot receiver with my user and take away the most dreaded route in the game, which is the whip route. Okay, so I will double team here, right? And I will user this guy and I'll put everybody else in outside leverage. Okay, the corners are an outside leverage, I know, but I think it helps them versus vertical streak routes. And if they get a dig, they might get help from if this guy runs if number two right now runs inside like a quick route, I'm gonna fall off and try to help out on number one on a dig. Okay, and you hope on the other side if a deep dig happens that maybe that three receiver hook player will at least make a tackle. So this is kind of the top way that I play my 57. He works inside like that. I'm gonna let him go. I might go help out there. I might go help out wherever. So that's what bracket coverage is. That's how bracket's different than double team. Bracket is, hey, when he goes away from my leverage, I'm gonna now help out somewhere else. Okay. But of course, being smart, I would always look for the zig route. So I would never get faked out if my guy that I'm double teaming here is going to be playing it's going to work inside. If he ever works inside like that, I'm going to sit and wait for this route right here because I want to play the zig. All right. So that's that formation. Let me show you a 3-by-1 formation and how I do it. You really can't get like a really great double team with your safety that's rotating down versus 3-by-1. Normal 3-by-1, guys. Not I'm not talking about nub. Let's just get Trey open. And let's call, I don't have to be in dime, I can be in nickel. So let me just kind of get a different defense going here. Let's go with nickel, cover one robber press, right? So we're good. Now I'm going to do the dreaded double team on the slot receiver, and I'm going to use this guy. A lot of times I back up just so I can now protect myself on outbreaking routes and sevens. Okay. Anything inside post or shallows, he's got him. All right. And I'm looking for the zig. Once I clear the zig, if that guy goes away from me, the receiver, then I'm going to help out on number one. Over here, we have our technique that I talked about. He's going to be a good guy to help technically a bunch of people. If number two runs a post or an over route, this guy is there to at least make the throw go high. Okay. And if obviously the tight end runs something crossing across the field, same thing. But also, he helps out on the potential of the outside route over here, running a dig. You hope that he can have good presence. Okay. So I'm going to, again, put everybody outside leverage on defense, and I'm going to user this guy. Okay. And we're going to work our routes. I get an outbreaking route, that's on me. And then now you can see how that whole player or that robber player kind of helped out as almost like a pseudo double team on the backside. All right. So I have some examples that I'm going to show you guys on Patreon of me running this stuff and getting interceptions. But this is a big third and medium, big red zone coverage for me. And that's kind of how I started. There's probably million different ways that you can kind of jerry rig this thing up. But I do like letting the deep guys play man coverage and letting the underneath guys play more of the either the user or the zone coverage. Okay. So that's pretty much 57. And we use 57, like I said, in those situations. You could use it on third down if you know somebody really wants to get the ball to somebody. Somebody has a development game and he has them in the slot or he has them anywhere. You could just kind of like try to double team them the best you can. All right. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for this part of the playbook of the coverage part. We didn't get into cover one blitz coverage, but that's pretty much the same as cover one hole. All right, we didn't get into the zone pressure coverage. We'll talk about that when we get into the actual zone pressures. And that's about it, man. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. And I'll see you in the next part of the video, part 3.